Sean has got some exciting news about All Wrapped Up. Well, it's always exciting, Sean.
Thank you. So for those that don't know, All Wrapped Up is our big Christmas initiative, giving presents and food vouchers out to families in need identified through the local schools. Last year we helped 560 children, presents for 560 children and food vouchers for 265 families, I think it was. Referrals have started again for this year with the schools, and they're starting to come in at a pace now, and will be up until the end of November. We're anticipating that it's probably going to be even more demand than last year. So there's sort of various sort of pleas, sort of really, if you're able, please pray for us first of all. It's a big project, and and God's provided for this up to now, and we believe He's going to provide again for us this year. If you're able to, and wish to donate toys, I think Keely's mentioned before, we're particularly low on toys for the 0 to 3 age group, and for the older sort of teenagers. But any presents for any ages will be gratefully received and bless families going out. One of the things we're doing slightly differently this year is, instead of the last couple of years, we've given fleece blankets and selection boxes to the children. This year, what we're hoping to do is, rather than do that, is to provide tickets for families to go and do an activity together. So I met this week with the Cavanagh Cinema, and they're absolutely on board and looking at how we can potentially provide cinema vouchers to the families so they can go and do something together after Christmas. And also I've got a meeting next week. Well, I've already had a meeting in the summer, but another meeting next week with Active Life to look at swimming vouchers or roller skating vouchers for families. So for that, what we're really, and this is sort of another plea, we're really sort of looking for sponsorship towards that. So if you've got any connections with local businesses, I think that would potentially be interested in sponsoring some of that, would be really good to, if you could take a leaflet. There's some on the section outside to pick up. It's got a QR code to a video of how it was set up last year to give people that, and there is a section QR code if people want to give. But we'd be more than welcome to meet with anybody that was interested around sponsoring that, and talk to them about how we can work with them and promote that. So that's where we're at the moment. I'm sure we'll probably keep regular updates as we get sort of closer and closer to the time. We'll be coming out possibly next week, if not the week after, asking for volunteers to put names down to help on the days, which will be the 10th and 11th of December. I think that's everything for now.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean. As you know, it is really a huge project, and we try and get better every year at providing the right things, but we do need sponsorship and money. So as Sean said, if you've got contacts anywhere, or you're happy to go and chat to shops or businesses that might want to donate or sponsor in any way to help us make this project. And please remember, people can't just turn up and come there, all through referrals, through flows, health visitors, social workers. So it is the really poorest and neediest families in our community across Whitstable and Herne Bay. So it's not a free-for-all. People are really in need who are referred to us, and we trust our schools and our partners to do that. And as you say, last year there was a lot of families, and we anticipate even more. So if you can help in any way, be thinking you can buy a present, that would be amazing. And you can give through our website too, and volunteering. Obviously, we took 115 of us last year to volunteer across the 2 days to make it work. So be thinking of all those things, because it is coming very fast. And thank you to all the amazing All Wrapped Up team who work all through the year to make this happen. But now I want to introduce somebody who you all know, but it's just a real honour and a privilege to have her speaking today. She's looking at me like, why are you bigging me up? Abbie, come up. Give Abbie a huge round of applause. Abbie is continuing our series, This Is Us. And yeah, we're just delighted to have you speaking with us. Go for it.
Thanks, Keely. Right, make sure I've got myself all set up. Right, and I've got to clock the time, so hopefully I won't be here all day, because when I get started on something I'm passionate about, I tend to go on a bit. But it is a great privilege to be able to continue this series. This is us. So, as Simon said, we'll be looking at our aspirational distinctives, who we are as a community, what we aspire to be, and also what we carry in ourselves. Some of these things we already do, and some of these things we are striving towards being. So, what I'll be covering today is following on from all of these. So if anyone has missed any of these, this is where we're at so far. You can catch up on YouTube. So the first that Simon did was in our relationship with God, we try to be intimate, expectant, inspired, and spirit-led. And then Keely talked us through, in our relationship with ourselves, we believe we are loved, accepted, and being transformed by God. And that Simon took us through, in our relationships with others, we try to be honest, authentic, and interdependent. And then we moved on into our sharing. We try to be relevant, real, and good for everyone. So this is what I'll be covering today. In our outlook, we are welcoming, loving, inclusive, and safe. So there's quite a lot in there. But I'll take you through a breakdown of those qualities kind of from my perspective, things that I've experienced, things I've learned along the way, things that I'm still trying to model and learn and find the weird way through these things, as life can often be when you're trying to follow God in this weird world. So an outlook. I was like, it just made me think of Microsoft Outlook. I spend a fair amount of time on it day to day, emailing. I work a lot with schools, of course, and we're big on partnerships and working through, trying to just be good for everyone, living our values and all that. But I had a little look and I was like, what is an outlook? What is to have an outlook? So it's to have an attitude or an approach to something. An attitude to live by, or an approach to life in general. So it comes from within us, how we kind of interact with everything around us, everyone around us. Because we can't decide if we have an effect on people, we can only decide how. So I've broken this down into kind of two different parts, kind of life we see now and actions we may be doing now, and then some ways that this could be taken a bit further into our being and becoming, and kind of keeping in step with just trying to move forward and grow and stretch ourselves in these areas. So for an outlook, sometimes we see these in mottos. This one usually gives me the ick, as it tends to be overused quite a lot, and for when you've experienced hardship in life, seeing a sign that says, live, laugh, love. I remember reading one that was the complete opposite, that said, die, cry, and hate. So it tends to, you get people that have kind of, get the jaded sense of humour that goes with it, but kind of the honest principle of it is kind of one of positivity, of being a good person, of being a loving person. Some other ones, work hard, play hard. Anyone a fan of that one? Be the change you wish to see in the world. Be yourself, everyone else is taken. And when life gives you lemons, get the gin. No? That one I saw quite often as I was trying to look at variations of it. Get the gin was quite a popular one. Goodness knows why. So that's kind of how it is now in outlooks, and how we can kind of try and have mottos to get us through. In terms of being and becoming, we can see through Jesus' examples and teachings of what love is. Loving enemies, being a person who is safe, bringing value and worth back to people, supporting and lifting every single person, the voiceless, those who are different, those who have just lost the life lottery. They just had a lot of bad luck. People who are hopeless, people who are traumatised, people who have nothing to offer in interactions with others. Maybe they don't enjoy talking to other people. They just find a lot of things quite difficult. They don't feel like they have a lot to give. So that's where we're going to start with an outlook. So I'm going to take you through each one. We're going to start with welcoming. When you tend to think of being welcomed, to be welcomed is to be accepted into a space with pleasure and hospitality. And we have the saying here that people come in and they get Keely'd, which is kind of our best representation of what it means to be welcomed. That I also was Keely'd when I first came here, so it's an experience I can carry. So in terms of kingdom values, being and becoming, why do we welcome? Why do we welcome? Is it a transaction? Oh, if people come, then that helps us feel better that we're doing something right because people want to come. Do we expect to get something in return? That people come regularly? That they make a commitment to faith? That they go on a rota? In embodying being welcoming people, a welcoming presence for people is allowing people the freedom to engage with us how they feel comfortable. For a long time, it became a running joke that I didn't want any physical contact with anyone. I heard those little murmurs. Those who know me and those who don't know me as well, it was just the running joke. Definitely no hugs. I had to enforce this boundary regularly, being how friendly Riverside is. And in my efforts to grow and develop, I realised I needed to intentionally work on this. I wanted to connect with people in a way that made me more welcoming, because for people who wanted to come and give me a hug, I would literally have my hands up and go, nope, please don't touch me. So I made a point of being intentional about it. And I started giving hugs to people. And I realised how big of a deal it became, because people would actually step back and almost do what I did and go, whoa, are you sure? Is that okay? Yeah, it's okay. And if you know me, I like to voice how I'm feeling in that moment. So I was like, I feel incredibly uncomfortable, but I want to push through this and do this. Me giving hugs is now a way that people can feel loved by me and welcomed by me, because they've seen what a big deal it was to grow in that way, to push through that discomfort. That also brings that connection that I wanted to give to people. And why should I keep that from them just because of my discomfort? So in order to embody a welcoming presence through ourselves, it is my belief that we must always have some kind of emotional reserve within us, because it can take a toll to try and be welcoming when you can't always control what happens in life. Good things happen, bad things happen. Life gets busy. A reserved space with us just for new connections, just to give welcome to people. Just a tiny reserve is all it takes. An expectant encounter of a new friend. When we embody this, we can carry it as a presence where we go, and people will notice it. They may not be able to have words for it, but they will notice it. People can sense it when you're welcome in their presence. That is a moment of connection that we can be and become in being welcoming people, just on our own, but as collectively as Riverside as well, which we all do so very, very well. Second, we're going to look at loving, which almost feels like a bit of an overdone topic. It's what is there to bring that could be new to this for us to try and do it well and be it well. So I kind of looked at the things that we kind of know through life, but also that were written in the Beatitudes, fruits of the Spirit, those kind things, forgiveness, patience, humility, consideration, thoughtful gestures, intentional ways to build up a person. There's different kinds of love, isn't there? You have love for your children, which is different to love you may have for a partner, a friend, that work colleague that just embodies everything that really annoys you. But we try and find a way of loving through that. And relationships are hard. Probably the hardest things that we have to work through in life. But we always yearn for them. We are designed to connect with each other, with ourselves, with God. To embody love in being a loving person, showing greater love. There was a quote I found that I really liked that says, "Love is being and relationships are doing." I can't remember who said it, but it was just something that came to my mind, which I thought was really nice. And love is being, relationships are doing. So this is from 1 John 4, verses 7 to 19. And it says, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God, and whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us and his love is made complete in us. This is how we know that we live in him and he in us. He has given us of his Spirit, and we have seen and testify that the Father has sent his Son to be the Saviour of the world. If anyone acknowledges that Jesus is the Son of God, God lives in them and they in God. And so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God and God in them. This is how love is made complete among us, so that we will have confidence on the day of judgment. In this world, we are like Jesus. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. We love because he first loved us. So how do we remain in love? I've always been quite intrigued by that phrase. What does it mean to remain in love? Is it a feeling? Is it actions that we do? What is it? Is it something to maintain? Is it something to grow? What is it? So I was having a look at what I could bring, something that could kind of add to the whole thing of being loving. And what do we do when things go wrong? We misunderstand someone's intention. We make an assumption about someone that's wrong. We have expectations that have been unmet and unsaid. Someone says something or does something in a certain way that's grumpy or snippy. In becoming and embodying love, we can learn and practice how to get relationships back to a place of love when things inevitably go wrong. Because we do it all the time, every day, don't we? We're not perfect people. We have bad days. maybe bad weeks, months, years. But we long to connect. But it's when the things go wrong that we really have to dig into who we are, what we are, and who we want to be. We can reconcile relationships, we can restore, we can bring healing, we can bring understanding, and we can make peace with people. This requires hard conversations. You know, the ones you have with everyone else except the person you need to have it with. We must trust each other that we're all striving for the same outlook and the same outcome, to be more like Jesus, to be like his character and what he taught for us to be in the world around us, to live out and model a new way of being. Is there anything that you need to get off your chest? Do you need to reconcile with someone who doesn't even realise how you feel? Maybe they said something in a certain way that just made you go, oh, did I do something? Maybe there's something you did that you want to go and make right with somebody. Again, we come back to being intentional. This also requires a lot of vulnerability, that word. To be able to bear a wound to each other, to not hide it. To seek out healing and find a middle ground where we both just want to be the best versions of ourselves and support each other in that. So in terms of how this can kind of be practical, I found some really great quotes by someone called Gillian Churecki. I think who's like a relationships coach, one of those. To love someone is to give them love in the way they need us to, not just in the way that's comfortable for us. To love someone is to want to understand how the pain of their childhood shows up in their adulthood. I see this quite a lot with young people that I support in schools, that childhood isn't fun for them. They're dealing with a lot. Their families are dealing with a lot. The adults are dealing with a lot, and they're trying their best. To love someone is to want them to feel safe. It is to be committed to co-creating a relationship that is a calm, safe refuge. Life can be exciting enough. To love someone is to want them to feel free, to be who they are, to express themselves, and to pursue the things that give their life purpose and meaning. To love someone is to take care of ourselves, because when we do, we can show up better for them too. So a big part of what I try and do and model is having good boundaries, good time for rest, because I can be a goer and a doer. My mind's always working and I always want to do more and be more. But if we burn ourselves into the ground, then we're not good for ourselves. We're not good for anyone around us. So it's good to find that of the quality sometimes over the quantity. So that is a bit of what I wanted to bring to add into what we can become in being loving. Inclusive. So at the minute, being inclusive and inclusion, it can be taking measures to ensure that people are included in certain things. They're given appropriate resources and opportunities, whether that be because of disabilities, a neurodiversity, having some mental well-being support, being LGBTQ, having some kind of difference like dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. And historically, we see, and still see today, efforts of inclusion in many areas, such as women and people of colour. Like the new leader of the Conservative Party is a woman and a woman of colour, which is seems to be an issue for people. So in terms of kingdom and being and becoming people who are inclusive, I was looking at, okay, what is the greatest outcome we can strive for? Because, of course, my kind of story with, as a lot of you know, is of being excluded because of my sexuality, to then come back to church after 5 years and, well, here I am. So what does it mean to be inclusive people rather than just an inclusive place? So difference doesn't mean that we segregate. Diversity can become a non-issue. I happen to be a lesbian. That's not the main focus of me as a person. It's just one facet of who I am, just like I have brown hair and size 7.5 to 8 feet, if anyone wants to buy me any trainers. That's probably a size 8. Some examples that I've kind of introduced in the Youth Hub for young people is having sensory items, which turn out to be the most popular items for everyone. Having quiet environments. There's no need for people to kind of sit and listen. Just kind of being gathered nearer is more than enough. Because some people listen without making eye contact. Some people listen without making face contact. And I also promote people's ability to choose. Anxiety is one of the biggest issues that I see today, even in myself and in those closest to me and around me. Whether it's just a general feeling of anxiety, something that they need to have medical support with, or just a lot of worry. To help ease anxiety, people need to help to feel like they're in control of what's going on. Being able to give people choice. But also being consistent people who do what they say what they do. But also to show up when we say we're going to show up, to be there when we say we're going to be there. Proactive ways we can demonstrate inclusion is consideration and acknowledgement. To have people's needs considered in advance sends such an incredible message. So if someone finds, for example, standing up for long periods quite difficult, a way of being inclusive is from the front saying, you don't have to stand up. Be as comfortable as is good for you. Just having that awareness in advance where people don't need to advocate for themselves in those moments for what they need. Having options available, providing for someone's needs shouldn't make them feel like it's a trouble. They're just as much part of this great diversity of people. They are that one sheep that is in that story. And finally, this thing I am particularly passionate about as people who work with me and people who know me know quite well. Being safe people. So technically, in the way that I described it with the staff team, I'm unsafe at the moment because I'm not wearing my badge. But that was just a little way that I always make sure I'm wearing my badge when I'm around the building, because this sends a message that I'm a safe person. Just those small little things. So at the moment, in life, general actions, having safe places, they have rules, so you know where you are and aren't allowed to go. They have boundaries, places where you are free and protected from harm. To feel safe is to not anticipate any potential harm coming to you. So, where can we go in being and becoming? Because we would all love that, for someone to say, yeah, they're a safe person. If I need someone safe, I can call them. Where do we get to that point? Where do we start? What does it look like? How can we actively try and become it? And what makes a person feel safe? So a good place to start, I found, is allowing people to have emotional safety. What I mean by that is trying to model that it's okay to be yourself. You can be yourself here. You don't have to think what I think. You don't have to agree with what I agree with, except maybe my music taste. You don't have to talk or do things a certain way to be safe, to be accepted. You don't have to believe what I believe to be safe with me. And one of my favourite verses that I found while I was studying my degree, that I actually wrote in capital letters in the front of my Bible that I had at the time, is from Romans 13:10. Love does no harm to a neighbour, therefore love is the fulfilment of the law. I think those are 4 very powerful words when they're put together. Oh, sorry, my hair wants in on the action. Love does no harm. Who decides if something is harmful? Is it the person who's said something or done something? Is it someone's intentions? Is it the person who's receiving some kind of communication or action who decides? I don't have the answer. That's something to kind of ponder on and work through, and I'm still working it out. But I always try and come back to that. Love does no harm. And what do we need to embody all of these things? Authenticity. It's at the heart of embodying our values, in our outlook. So we need to approach each moment with expectation, trusting in the unshakable goodness in every person, which can be very hard. And some people believe that, some people don't. But I do. So when we're welcoming, not to have this expectation of it being some kind of transaction. Oh, if I'm nice enough for long enough, they might do something in return. To be able to leave space for God to speak to people, to move in people's minds and hearts, celebrating what makes us unique and respecting that people's lives are very, very different. So I'm just aware of the time, so I'm going to go forward slightly. So the end goal would be whoever interacts with me would feel welcome, they would feel loved, they would feel included, and they would feel safe. And why is that? Why do we want that to be the case? Because God first welcomed, loved, included, and became a safe person for us. And I'm sure we all have our story of how that's played out, if it's played out. Thankfully, God sent the Holy Spirit to us to help us in this. So in practice, we can try to embody these things by approaching everyone as family, which is quite a big statement to make. But we do belong to each other, whether we like it or not, we believe it or not, we accept it or not. God loves every single one of his children. And God has called us to be enlightened witnesses to the world and the people around us to model a different way of thinking, seeing, and moving through life. Our purpose is to become whole, healthy, and experiencing the fullness of life. Those of us who believe Jesus was and is who he said he is, the one who brings us back into perfect relationship with God. We are to demonstrate, witness to, model and nurture this wholeness to everything and everyone around us, which is what we do day in, day out. Through our welcome, love, inclusion and safety, we return people to the truth of who they are. They are created, they are known, they are loved, and they are good. A lot of people need to hear that they are good. Because people don't believe that they are unshakably good. It's difficult to accept. But everyone wants their parents to be proud and their children not to be ashamed. Do you believe at your core that you're good? Because so many things can get in the way of seeing our own goodness. Crippling mental illness, trauma that's layered, complex and destructive, and just losing the life lottery. Parents, education, area they grew up in, their friends, their experiences, just lost the lucky draw, all of them. The messages they've received have been ones of failure, of being less than, of not having value. Through every interaction I've had with young people, this is something that I bring myself back to, that every person is unshakably good, and I will believe that for them until they believe it for themselves. Then over time, you watch people become that truth, that goodness is at the core of who they are, returning people to themselves. Through everything we do and are as people, we are dismantling messages that get in the way of that truth. Messages of shame, of disgrace, having little value, being unworthy, being unimportant, being invisible. Someone who I really look up to is a guy called Father Gregory Boyle. He's a Jesuit priest in Los Angeles, very rock and roll. He is the founder and head of Homeboy Industries, which is now the largest gang intervention rehabilitation organisation in the world. And one of my favourite books that I recommend wholeheartedly, where he reflects on God's character through stories of his experiences with gang members, is called Tattoos on the Heart, The Power of Boundless Compassion. And he was being interviewed on a podcast, and it was called Welcoming the Unwelcome. And I just want to read, as my kind of final part, a quote from what he said. "We are allergic round here of holding the bar up and asking folks to measure up. You know, we want to show up to them with a mirror and say, you're exactly what God had in mind when God made you. There's nothing missing here. And once they know that truth, they become that truth. They inhabit that truth. And indeed, no bullet can pierce it. No 4 prison walls can keep it out. And death can't touch it because it's huge." You talk about the margins, the poor, the powerless, the demonized, the voiceless, the easily despised, the readily left out. All those people who are at the margins. And you go to the margins not to make a difference. You go to the margins so that the folks at the margins make you different. If you go to the margins to make a difference, then it's about you. And it just can't be about you. So then you go there to be made different, and it becomes about us. There's something that happens in it. This is how people don't burn out, you know, because they go to the margins and they delight in the people that they find. So you go where love has not yet arrived, and you love what you find there. I think we do that quite well. And I think we're still able to grow even more in all of those ways. And the important thing with it is whatever you choose to do with it, whatever your outlook will be genuine, be authentic, go at your own pace. And if there are days that you have a bad day, people are saying, you should smile more. Sometimes you just can't manage it. That's usually me when I'm not having a great day. Where you can try, but we shouldn't pretend. We should be able to be ourselves. So in our outlook, we are welcoming, loving, inclusive, and safe. Can the band come back up, please? Thank you. So there was a lot in there, but particularly in those kind of qualities. Where would you like to start? Would you like to start on all of them? Would you like to start on one of them? Would you like to start at all on them? Is there stuff that you need to settle in yourself first? Have a bit of an in-look before you have an outlook? Were there any particular things that kind of hit a sharp note of, I might need to do something there? The important thing is to give yourself a bit of a break in being hard on yourself. We can all have that little voice in our head that is always our greatest critic. So when we sing our last song, just take a moment, build a bit of that emotional reserve in yourself. And if anyone would like to talk through anything, have some prayer, feel free to hang on once we've finished, or at any time when we're having tea and coffee. But I truly believe that we're doing these things and we are becoming these things, and we've got everything that we need, and we've got each other to have an outlook being welcoming, loving, inclusive, and safe.